hello and welcome to The Future of Work. I'm your host, Claudia Virlanuta, and today I'd like to introduce you to my guest, Zach Braiker. Zach is an innovation strategist and a growth marketer on the forefront of innovation. He is experienced in delivering digital transformation, innovation, and growth marketing strategy for businesses and organizations that are committed to a customer-first approach. Zach's specialty is helping businesses and leaders navigate the present and think about the future. He develops and implements practical, efficient, and evidence-based solutions by leveraging his experience. Prior to Refine+Focus, Zach worked in Africa, Brazil, UK, US, India, and the Middle East. Did I get that right, Zach?
Yeah, well, first off, it's so nice to see you and so nice to be here. And this is a great conversation and a great time for it.
So without further ado, what's the last thing that you yourself learned that got you really, really excited? And why is that?
We have an amazing group of summer interns from business schools and undergrads from liberal arts, and most of them are really nicely balanced between maybe they have a minor in dance and an MBA that they're pursuing, for example. And I had a chance to learn about their backgrounds, their passions, their interests, what motivates them. And they're so diverse. One of them is in India full-time. One of them is in South Korea right now. 3 of them are in the US. They come from different sensibilities. They have different passions. They have different interests. And yet there's a common thread about caring for one another, doing good work, and making things in the kind of post-pandemic era of, do I work from home? Do I work from a structured environment? Do I take a gap year? All that has kind of come to the forefront, and learning about them has really got me excited. And I can tell you about each one of them and their lives and their stories, but really that's my highlight in terms of learning is people and them in particular.
That's awesome. And especially during the lockdown and during the pandemic, it just became so much more important because we were kind of shut off from people. So
absolutely.
And congrats on your recent additions to the team. Also, I know how important it is to get the right people.
Yeah, they are phenomenal, and there is no shortage of smart people and brilliant people, but to have people who are kind and considerate and conscientious and really want to grow something larger than themselves and be a part of a team, that's more rare. And so we had 400 people apply, and we selected 5 of the 400, and we are very proud of our team's ability to find the right fit for us.
Wow, that's awesome. So it sounds like it's harder to get into Refine+Focus than it is to get into Harvard.
Well, we're looking for very particular things. Not to say that Harvard isn't, but yeah.
They're looking for their own particular things.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like a great place to be for them as well. And I know that for a fact because I've known you for a few years now. So you guys are going to have an awesome time. So Zach, you've been in marketing at this point for many, many years.
16.
Yeah, so 16. So for 16 years, you've been in marketing and you've kind of seen the comings and goings of the marketing industry, and you've seen the software revolution and then the data revolution that we're in right now. How do you see the marketing world's use of data right now?
Sure, it's a great question. First off, just because you can measure it doesn't mean it's meaningful. That's an expression, but it's also true. And what is most important are the things that help us make better decisions. Whether this is in healthcare, whether this is in business, whether this is in marketing, it's understanding data that actually has a direct bearing on decision making. And so what sometimes people do, whether it's agencies or in-house or big companies, is they want to flood you with KPIs and different kinds of data and show you all the things that can be measured. But really what the discipline that we need is to understand how those things kind of level up to key decision-making points, and how one facet of an organization, let's say marketing, how their data works in conjunction with the data of other departments. So for instance, like account-based marketing with ABM, like finding ways of sharing where sales and marketing can work together with common terms and common understandings to go after key accounts. Or even in our own work, what we've experienced is when engineers are trying to understand customers, they don't say, I need information from product people, I need information from marketing people. They say, I need information about the customer. And so knowing who owns that information and whether or not marketing is responsible for that information, those are the decisions that people are trying to face right now, is who owns customer information, who owns customer data. Some of the data is quantitative and Excel sheet worthy, and others of it is survey based and anecdotal. And so trying to create full stories inside of a company, and marketing knowing its role in not just the data component, but using data to tell powerful stories that impact decision making is really critical. And that's what I'd like to see more of in the future, is that the data needs to mean something more.
So you've touched on a few really interesting points there. So on the one hand, you touched on marketing team's ability to access data from multiple sources and kind of go across silos to get a complete like 360-degree view of a customer. And on the other hand, you've touched also on their ability to tell a story. So where do you think, given where we are now in terms of the data technologies used by marketing teams and the data sources that they're using, where do you think we are in terms of their ability to access and use that data is best? And what do you think are the next steps to nirvana, let's call it nirvana, to that ideal place where they would be fully empowered and they would have everything they need to know about the customer at their fingertips so that they can best serve the customer?
Yeah, nirvana would be when different industries are on the same page about the value of data and the ability to use data. And also different industries have different amounts of liability in terms of what data they can know and how they can know it. So for instance, from a perspective of a firm, we have clients in healthcare and we have clients in consumer packaged goods. We have clients that value using a CRM in B2B marketing for tech, for example, and they want to know every single touch point. They're using tools like 6 Sense and Alice and a lot of really powerful B2B tools that do an exceptional job. And everyone is on the same page that data is gold. But then there's other instances where we have clients that don't even use a CRM. They don't do any information to track customers other than retargeting and advertising, but there's no kind of sense of throughout a customer journey, what data matters at different points. So what would be really important in the future would be just to understand that during a customer's life cycle, that there's different points of contact, and that those points of contact will inform how we reach and how we serve those customers, and that information doesn't just stick with marketing, but gets submitted to HR for an employer's brand, that gets submitted to sales, that gets submitted to the overall experience. And that even though customers' experience might be linear, there's a lot of different people in different silos that we can break that all can kind of use this information to form a bigger picture with more people participating in how they serve the customer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So I completely agree with your point about the need to work across teams. And I've seen it done successfully in many, many companies. There are still companies out there, however, that don't work very necessarily successfully across teams for a variety of reasons. And one of them that I believe is still something that teams everywhere are trying to work on and marketers everywhere are working on is the fact that really there's a bit of a skill gap in terms of how larger marketing teams who have more resources are able to get that talent in-house to leverage their data. And then on the other hand, you have other teams where perhaps don't have those resources, they don't have that talent in-house, and they have to kind of make do with a collection of tools that they have to leverage as best as they can, even though they are separate and they don't give them the best kind of view of the whole data and the whole customer. So how important would you say it is for marketers of the future to be data savvy and to be able to leverage this data on their own right now and also in the future?
Yeah, I mean, data savvy is very important because it also suggests that what data matters. There's so many places where you can get more data than you need. And there's so many tools that help you visualize and find out every nuance of every possible interaction to ever happen. But for instance, if you simply know like, okay, my bounce rate's high when someone comes to my website and how to interpret that, there are certain pieces of data that are more important than other pieces of data. And there is always a discrepancy between the haves and the have-nots in terms of the size of the budget and the report. I mean, I've seen incredible reports that can do, whether it's like heat maps or zip code targeting or mining for very particular kinds of information. And these services are expensive and they're difficult to come by if you are a smaller company. So it's, that's where you need to know what are the key drivers that you want to focus on. Mm-hmm. And also you have to build a brand that's significant and that means something to a group of people. And the more you can tell a story that's powerful and you can test whether your brand means something and the meaning is consistent over time, that's the kind of data that I would be looking for. Otherwise, you could be competing against, imagine how the access and treasure trove of someone like Amazon and how many data points they have when they're trying to optimize for price.
Absolutely. And speaking of Amazon, just the sheer army of data scientists and data engineers and data analysts that they have when it comes to leveraging the data that they have about the customer. So in that context, speaking of Amazon and those types of resources, do you think it's worth for marketers to go ahead and educate themselves and for marketing managers out there to invest in bringing their teams up to speed on the skills that they need for leveraging this data and telling the right story about their customers? Or is that something that you see is just going to be perhaps something that would be useful now, but maybe not as necessary in the future?
The data is only going to become more relevant in the future, and that the learnings and the investment in it will only become more relevant in the future. However, whether you make a decision to invest in that now, or you make a decision to invest in team building and soft skills building of your team, that needs more context on a more individualized basis. But I do think you need to know what you're missing. So like have a sense of universe of how do I want to upskill a team of marketers? What are the different choices that I can invest in? And data is certainly one of them, but it is not necessarily the only one.
If you were to imagine a point in time in the future, let's say 5 years or 10 years from now, what do you think will be fundamentally different about the way marketing teams approach their work and approach getting to know their customer? And it can be anything. It can be the tools they use. It can be the way they work. Are they distributed? Are they in person? It can be anything that you can think of that would be super relevant at that point.
My belief is that there'll be more and more abilities to personalize so that at different places and stages of a customer's journey, you can reach them with different messaging that's relevant to that unique customer, whether it's by zip code or preference. Now, on the other hand, as we think about the increased ability to personalize, we have to think about the increased need for privacy. And so these two realities, they coexist. And so we're going to have to get smarter about how we respect privacy, but maybe provide consumers and others with more benefits for giving us information that they willingly give to us so that we can serve them with incredibly relevant and helpful information as they're making decisions.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the topic of data privacy is a very big one, but I agree with you that it's one of those topics that is only becoming more and more important. And any sort of data that companies are focused on right now is segmenting data to target the right groups of customers, data about how their customers use the product, all that stuff is going to be under a huge question mark moving forward.
I also think that for some brands and some organizations, marketing with influencers is still not crystal clear. There's still areas in which the FTC, which regulates how we work with influencers, there's still some gray area there. And the industry has progressed a lot, but as we see people like leveraging TikTok and Instagram influencers more and more, the rules will become better and better and tighter in terms of how we use influence, not just in B2C marketing, but in B2B marketing as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's a revolution that we're witnessing right now firsthand.
Yeah,
definitely. So Zach, what's a really cool project or initiative that you've been working on lately? And is there anything that specifically you would like to share with the Future of Work audience that you would like them to check out?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you without kind of disclosing the client name that we were working with a country in the Middle East. And the country, the government was our client, and we were also working with the World Bank on this initiative. And the country was not being seen by the rest of the world in the way that it would like to have been seen by the rest of the world. It wants to be seen as a place that has great technology, educated workforce, powerful and curious youth that can do a great job in working with global companies. And ultimately, they want to attract more business from places like the United States, where their tech talent and engineering talent can help the US and other countries succeed, as India has done such a great job and other places, Estonia in the past. And so what this really involved was starting by saying, let's carefully understand the present state. Let's analyze the way things are right now. Let's talk to people both in the country and out of the country to get a sense of why is the perception what the perception is. Then let's create an aspirational narrative about what the country wants to become. And then let's look at the gap between the aspiration and where the country is and take some real steps to mend the gap. And then after we do that, let's put together a very clear plan of saying, here's where you should invest in your people, in your processes, in your approach that can help you achieve that aspirational narrative, and then make it really specific into a timeline and a budget and roles and responsibilities and behaviors. Now do that during COVID in a different time zone for a different country, when many of the people in the country unfortunately were afflicted by COVID and others in the government changed roles and responsibilities, and then actually get to a finish line. That to me was very exciting, very challenging. It was meaningful work. I really appreciate our colleagues, but it had branding and marketing and storytelling and metrics and multiple marketing channels all involved in this big Herculean effort.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like a bear of an initiative that you guys wrestled with.
It was a bear, and we had a lot of really great collaboration on the client side. And at the same time, some of the goals were very lofty. So trying to hit them took a lot of work and thinking. So of course I can go into so much more detail, but that was one of the major projects that we accomplished recently.
Cool. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Zach. It was really a pleasure chatting with you. Thanks for joining us on the show. And for everyone watching, I hope this was useful and enlightening in some ways to you. And if you did enjoy it, please give us a like and subscribe to the show, and we'll keep them coming. Bye.
Thank you so much.